Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to a very special online event today. It's called Healing Toxic Overload, Safe, Effective, Plant-Powered Detox Therapies for Clearing and Restoring Your Body's Vital Systems. My name is Stephen Dino. I'm the founder and president of the Shift Network, and it's such a blessing to be with you here, getting to really learn from one of the preeminent teachers of plant medicine in the world and how to work with it in a really holistic, comprehensive, safe, integrative way. His name is David Crow. He's a licensed acupuncturist. He's a master clinical herbalist. He's a researcher and educator of natural medicine. He's taught many programs for Shift, deep dives, and today we're also going to learn about quite an extraordinary opportunity to go deep into the clinical herbalism practice with him and understand more about healing toxic overload. So we've got a whole 18 module training with him that's going to be coming up. It's really world class, and we're going to hear more about that in the second half of the hour. So with that said, David, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Stephen. It's always great to be with you.
Great. Well, as we like to do with this time, it's always good to have a little bit of your personal backstory. And instead of just focusing on the whole broad sweep of it, but maybe focus a little bit on why detoxification and healing toxic overload have really become, both personally and professionally, such a key part of your offering.
Yeah, good question. It's becoming more a part of my clinical practice just because toxicity in the world is increasing. Now, detoxification has always been part of my medical practice over the last 40 years because it's a part of classical Asian medicine. Detoxification has been part of Ayurveda and part of Chinese medicine for thousands of years, but in the last few years especially, I have really been focused more on what's happening in the environment and some of the real issues that are coming out now with the research into how we're being affected by microplastics and endocrine disrupting chemicals and so on that are building up in the food chain, and how these are creating new health problems and contributing to pre-existing conditions. So actually, my awareness of detoxification processes goes back about 40 years, and mostly it has been in the context of people doing excessive detoxification. So I have spent a lot of my clinical practice helping people to understand how to do detoxification correctly. And that's a very big part of this program and our conversation here. And so it's coming into focus more, and there's a lot that's coming out now. A lot of what's appearing on the internet is about these higher levels of toxins. And of course, a lot of this information is not very grounded medically or scientifically. And so my interest in this is to really bring things into focus and learn how to do things right and try to understand some of the medical complexities of this. And of course, the major source of toxicity that I deal with in my clinical practice are the pharmaceutical drugs. And many people come to me because they don't want to start medications, and we look at alternatives and what is safe to use instead. Or I work with the patients and the doctors to find ways to reduce the dose and find the least number of medications that are medically necessary and the lowest possible dose. So that's a category of toxicity also. But all of these things combine together now. We have a fairly complicated mixture of environmental toxins and pharmaceuticals and the natural toxins that the body produces anyway. I mean, cholesterol is in that category as well. So this is becoming increasingly necessary for every clinician to understand and to know about, and to help people make some educated decisions that are safe, basically, that are medically realistic, so that people don't hurt themselves trying to get things out that either aren't going to come out, or that too much stress is going to be put on the body unnecessarily. That's a very brief background of how this has come into focus for me.
Yeah, it really brings to, especially the increasing toxic load in the environment, and we're impacted from so many different directions now. So I want to start with that, the places where it's not working right now, a little bit more about like what can be unsafe about different kinds of detox approaches, whether sort of more mainstream or kind of more, herbal approaches as well that kind of need to be understood so that the positive detox approach can really be on firmer ground.
Right, exactly. This is very important, and it's a good starting point because what we're talking about is what not to do. And we should first know what not to do. I would say that this issue of harmful detoxification methods is probably the number one thing, the number one way that I meet people, actually. People come to me and they have a history of doing excessive or prolonged detoxification methods. And there's a wide range of things that people do and have done, and it contributes a lot to weakening the body. It's actually a very interesting thing to understand that the more detox we do, that actually the less capable we become of detoxification. So one of the ways that I organize this is we can put it on a spectrum, and we can say that there's extreme methods, and then there's kind of moderately safe methods, and then there are things that are quite safe as far as detox. And so the really extreme methods where I have seen people really hurt is when they do excessive fasting. Uh, I have seen people who have gone to retreats and done nothing but water for a month, and they've really hurt themselves from that. That's an extreme metabolic stress. Then there are some really exotic things that I never heard about until patients educate me about it, such as urtication, where people go to these retreats and they actually get beat with, stinging nettles to create hives all over themselves. And supposedly that's some activation of, the immune system that's detoxifying. But then they end up getting hurt from that. And probably one of the most severe in terms of medical emergencies is this so-called gallbladder flush, which is still floating around, even though it's been highly discredited now for years. And I've seen people who have damaged their gallbladders, even lost their gallbladders from trying to do this. Um, Another one that was around for quite a while was using niacin inside saunas, and that's a really good way to kind of like cook your liver. And then very popular repeated coffee enemas are colonics. And if these are done repeatedly, or any of these detox methods, uh, the longer they're done, the more repeatedly they're done, and especially if they're done also with a uh, lighter diet, like a vegan diet or vegetarian diet, over time, this can really deplete people. And I'll give a few of the medical consequences here in a minute, but those are really the more serious things. Then there are things that are more moderate that a lot of people do, like they do like a parasite cleanse, even though there's really no such thing, because parasitology is a branch of medicine that you have to diagnose and treat carefully. You can't just cleanse things. But people will do a lot of flushes, and they'll do, cleansing diets for a period of time. And if they're not done excessively, then they're not too dangerous or harmful. But the problem is that people develop a dependency on these things, and so they will end up taking cleanses and, flushes like over and over again. That's where the problem comes. And then there's milder things that are really low risk, and those are not a problem. And that's like the mono diet that you use when you're getting a Ayurvedic detox and things like that. So the milder the cleanse and the less frequent, then the less harm is going to come. But where people get really hurt is when they do intensive things and they do it over and over again. So what I've seen clinically, this has been where I've met a lot of people, is damage to the gallbladder, and people become very weak actually and depleted. It's the same category of issues that happens when people do excess dieting. There's a lot of similarities there. And what this does to the body is that it weakens the immune system. And the immune system actually is a very important aspect of detoxification, because detox is not just about flushing. Detox is also about our ability to manage the toxins at a cellular level. So what ends up happening is that if people do too much detoxification for too long, they actually become more sensitive to the toxins. They overstimulate the channels of elimination too much, and they lose their ability to detoxify effectively. Other things happen like loss of muscle mass and loss of weight. People become dehydrated. Too much stimulation of the colon disrupts the gut microbiome. There's a whole range of things that happen if we stress the body. And it's not healthy psychologically either. And a lot of people do get into a kind of unhealthy mental or emotional fixation about excessive detox. The same with weight. So we have to be very careful about that. And so there are principles, and this is part of the course that's coming up here, the principles of how to do detoxification safely. They're very well articulated in classical Asian medicine. We want to know the constitutional strength of the person. A very nice quote from ancient Chinese medicine: nourish the weak and cleanse the strong. And so we want to make sure that the person can actually tolerate some cleansing. And at the same time, we also want to build up the strength because our immune system is active in the detoxification process. We want to support the terrain. We don't want to flush away the gut microbiome. We want to build it up. And this is emerging as being very important for keeping the microplastic particles moving out of us, is we've got to have strong, healthy microbiome in the gut. We want to reduce inflammation. We want to gently support the channels of elimination, not overstimulate and wear them out. And a very important concept that is really not talked about at all is there's a lot of things we can't get out of the body, and therefore we need to have a strong internal immunity with that. And that's what the body's always doing, actually. So those are the main principles. Those are some things that I have seen.
It's a lot to be aware of, and all these good intentions in terms of cleansing out parasites or whatever, damaging the body. It sounds so important to really do this well. And so I know we want to start focusing more on the positives rather than just the cautionary side. So, and you were going to start us off with a bit of a exploration of our own healing, cleansing capacities, and what it's like to actually be detoxifying. You want to start there?
Well, this is like an affirmation that our body knows what it's doing.
Hmm.
And all we have to do is look at our physiological functions, and we see that the body is detoxifying all the time. As a matter of fact, metabolically, that's 50% of what the body is doing right now. 50% of what's happening inside the body for everybody is detoxification. The other 50% is assimilating the nutrients. And so our body is an organism that assimilates nutrients from food and from the atmosphere and from the sunlight that's in the food and so forth, and then eliminates the metabolic waste. What's the residue of that process? So the way that we can think about detoxification, and this is really important when it comes to the toxic burden that we're all facing now, which is increasing and quite serious. We cannot approach this by thinking linearly, like I'm just going to do this intensive flushing and it's all going to be okay. We have to now orient ourselves to a reality where we have to gently enhance what the body is already doing, as opposed to forcing the body to do something that will wear it out and weaken it. So if we look at what the body is doing, we can turn it into a meditation, actually. And this is also part of a lot of the classical practices, like in Qigong. There's a lot of emphasis on inhaling and exhaling. That's pranayama also. Well, what is inhaling and exhaling? Well, we can just do this together. I mean, we could just start with the breath. And this is how we use the air element to purify ourselves. We can just close eyes and relax for a minute. And then we can slowly inhale. And as we inhale, we notice that this is cleansing. This is the rejuvenation phase of every breath. This is oxygenation, and this is what goes in and ends up in the cells. Just goes in through the lungs, into the heart, passes through circulation into the cells and supports the oxygenation of the cells and metabolism. And then we exhale. Now that exhalation is actually the detoxification phase of our breath. And so the detoxification phase starts at the cells, and then the carbon dioxide comes back to the heart, the circulatory system, and then it goes back out through the lungs. So all we have to do to become aware of how the body is detoxifying itself through the respiratory system is watch our breath. And so we watch our breath. We notice that the inhalation is purifying and the exhalation is also purifying, but inhalation is nourishing and the exhalation is detoxifying. You see, so just in the breath, we're nourishing and detoxifying over and over. And if we incorporate that awareness in meditation, it actually enhances the powers of that process. We can actually start to feel that with every exhalation, the body's getting cleaner. And that's because where we put our attention, then the physiological processes are enhanced. We can also do that with a simple tea. We can take something like our Tulsi tea, which has a wonderful collection of detoxifying functions, and we just taste it. And as we feel it coming in, we can actually feel its soothing effects, its anti-inflammatory effects, its energizing effects. And this is starting the detoxification process using the water element and hydration and the teas that we drink are part of the detoxification of the fluids. So if we meditate with the teas coming in, it enhances the detoxification powers of whatever we're drinking. And especially if they are detoxifying herbs, then when we empty the bladder, that's the other phase. That's the detoxification phase. And so this happens continuously. And the main ways that we are detoxifying is we detoxify when we hydrate and empty the bladder. We detoxify when we eat healthy food and then move the bowels. And we detoxify as we inhale and exhale, but we also detoxify when we exercise, because that's movement and that's cleansing to the body and oxygenating to the body. And we also detoxify when we are sleeping. And therefore we get a big opening into how to support detoxification as we work on getting restorative sleep, and then the body detoxifies naturally. So these are a few ways that we can do this, and I didn't turn this into a formal meditation, but these are things that anybody can do really easily. As you are taking a walk, observe that the breath is deepening and observe that the detoxification is happening. When you are going to bed, focus on the feelings of relaxation, getting deeper and deeper. And when you wake up, you will feel more detoxified. So that's a simple observation that the body is always detoxifying. And that is very important to remember, because that's the basis then of healthy, balanced detoxification processes, is just work with those.
Super helpful. And I really like this reoriented towards our body as sort of having all these natural detoxification processes that we can help to support in different ways rather than sort of impose different agenda. Do you want to spend a little time talking about now some of the major exogenous toxins, the external things that we are working with, and how you might work with those differently and in terms of this more holistic approach?
Well, now we get into some of the really unpleasant things. And that's because these toxins are increasingly prevalent. There's a huge amount of research coming out about these. A lot of this stuff has been building up for a while, and now it's really coming out how serious it is. So the main ones are things that people have probably heard about, but they may not know much about them. So the main environmental toxins, which, as you mentioned, the term exogenous, external toxins, are particulate matter. That's what we are breathing in from wildfire smoke and air pollution, and endocrine disrupting chemicals, microplastics, and heavy metals. If we start with those four, those cover the main categories of toxins that are out there. But each one of these has many subcategories. For example, the endocrine disrupting chemicals, there's dozens and dozens of those. And microplastics is not one thing. It's like hundreds of types of plastics and chemicals that are in it. And of course, there's many kinds of metals, and particulate matter is not one thing. So all of these things have a tendency to affect one system or two systems primarily that we can identify. And if we can make a clear link between a cause and effect, then we can say, all right, this is uh, something that we can focus on specifically for detoxification. For example, when people get respiratory inflammation and asthma is worsened and people get bronchitis after being exposed to wildfire smoke anywhere now, uh, especially in the western states where we've had a lot of this, we can see a clear correlation between the air quality and the particulate matter. Uh, it's turning, the sky orange, and sometimes ash is raining down, and our lungs get inflamed. So that's a clear link between one type of toxin and one organ system. But that particulate matter is now linked to dementia also, because the particulate matter is also binding with heavy metals. And it's coming in through the sinuses, and from the sinuses, it gets into the brain. So it's established now that people who live near highways are subjected to higher levels of toxicity that's increasing dementia rates. All right. So these all mix together. But we can also see things like the endocrine disrupting chemicals, kids who grew up with, chewing on a lot of plastic and rubber toys from China, for example, may have developed into endocrine problems like polycystic ovarian syndrome and things like that. So we can make some links that the endocrine disrupting compounds tend to affect the endocrine system, but they affect other things also. Microplastics are pretty well known at this point to inflame the gut and to accumulate in the brain and the liver. So we are seeing that, yes, they do go to certain organs, but we also know, and this is what makes this really important, is that these external toxins actually bind to the internal toxins in the body. And there are three primary internal toxins to consider here. One is the inflammatory compounds, and the other is cholesterol, and the other is sugar, okay, glucose. And sugar and glucose and inflammation are all part of metabolic syndromes. And therefore, anybody who has a pre-existing condition of a metabolic issue, high cholesterol, or prediabetes or diabetes, these are both caused by environmental toxins, but they're also worsened by it. And so what we're seeing now is that microplastics binds with heavy metals, microplastics binds with particulate matter. All of these things are coming in like these, conglomerations of these toxins, and then they're binding with cholesterol and making the plaque development in the cardiovascular system worse. So those are a few of the most important toxins and some of the systems that they affect.
Great overview, and also sobering the sheer number of them as well. So, I wonder if you could share a little bit more about how you can identify whether a particular ailment is connected to a certain toxin, and like how to sort of like map those things onto each other.
Well, that's pretty sophisticated diagnosis, and you have to look at each individual case. The way that I do this in my clinical practice, I call this clinical level self-care. And of course, this is detective work, and you have to look at a lot of different factors. So one of the things that I do in my consultations is somewhat unique. It shouldn't be, but it is unique, is that I take the time to really put together a chronology of events. And we can then trace all the way from childhood, toxic exposures in childhood, and we can trace some things back. Many people say that, They grew up around a lot of agricultural toxins, and now their endocrine system is disturbed. All right. Some people have said, well, I was exposed to DDT, and now their endocrine system is disturbed. We can see links if we put together a chronological health history and really factor everything in. And sometimes you can see a clear correlation between an exposure environmentally and a health problem. But for most people, it's not that easy. It's more like just adding layers and layers over time. And then there was stress factors, and then there's, the periods of time in college where people weren't eating well and using a lot of stimulants and got burned out, and then they got mono and all these things. They all contribute to this pattern. But the place where we can see cause and effect most clearly when we do this exercise is with the pharmaceuticals. And the pharmaceuticals also represent a category, a family of toxins. These are the iatrogenic toxins. Iatro, the toxins caused by doctors and drugs. And so if we do this clinical level self-care exercise, one of the first things that I always ask people is, have you studied your medications? And they will say, no, I'm on this statin and I'm on this, beta blocker, and I haven't studied it. I just, the doctor said, take this, so I'm taking them. And then I ask, well, did the doctor tell you anything about it? And they say, no. And so the doctors are not educating the patients, and the patients aren't educating themselves. And so then it becomes my role to educate them. And I just do a real simple exercise. I say, well, let's go to drugs.com and look. And this has an amazing effect when people actually look at the side effects of the drug, and the side effects are the manifestations of the toxicity of the medication.
Hmm.
Then you can go through and you can see all the organ systems that the drugs affect. Many of the drugs, the doctor should be monitoring the liver because the drugs are toxic to the liver, and many drugs will cause liver toxicity, chronic kidney disease is associated with, pharmaceutical medications. There are so many side effects that can come from pharmaceutical drugs, and people don't make the connection. You see, so that's really the answer to that question. How do we identify whether a current ailment is coming from a specific toxin or another variable? Mostly the environmental toxins tend to be kind of long-term exposures that build up and build up. They're not that easy to see unless there's a real clear example. You drank water in Flint, Michigan, okay? You got metal poisoning from the plumbing, okay? So that doesn't happen all that frequently, though, where people can make that clear connection. The place to make the clear connection is you went on a medication, and then two things happened. One or two things, or both. Either new symptoms started or pre-existing symptoms got worse. And that's where we can do this little historical research. And that takes us to the next level of the conversation. Well, now what? What do we do about this? And therefore, we frequently then go into the question of detoxification from pharmaceutical medications. And I would say that this is one of the biggest challenges and biggest topics in my clinical practice. The majority of people who are coming to me have toxicity because of medications, as opposed to this increasing burden of microplastics and all of this. We can see that these external toxins are aggravating things, and we need to take steps to protect ourselves and to lessen the burden in the body. But the most common source where we can clearly identify cause and effect is medications. So that's the answer to that.
Let's go in beyond what you just shared into a little bit deeper understanding of the physiological responses and how we can understand what's happening in our own body in response to those toxins.
Well, this is very complicated, and we don't have time to go into all of these toxins and what they do. There are countless, there's dozens and dozens, hundreds and hundreds of compounds, and they can each produce a wide range of effects, and they can each have a primary effect also. But what I have found in my research over the last several years. And more specifically, I've been really looking at this for the last year or two in terms of microplastics. I've become sort of, a bit of an expert in microplastics and endocrine disrupting compounds. But what I have discovered, which is really interesting, is that all toxins, all these external toxins, all produce one universal response in the body, which is inflammation. All right. Everything causes inflammation. And that's because the immune system's trying to fight it. The immune system's getting triggered by all these things. Now, that gives us a strategy for detoxification because there are many aspects of inflammation that we can help the body to remove. But it also gives us a new definition of detoxification, and that is we may not be able to get those microparticles of plastic out of the brain, which is accumulating in everybody. We may not be able to actually flush those out of the brain. We can get them out of the gut, but we can't get them out of the brain. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to cause damage. The damage that these toxins are doing in the cells, in the tissues, is because of the inflammatory response. And therefore, if we look at microparticles of plastic in the brain, what we see is the macrophages, the defense immune cells in our brain, the microglia, are trying to process the plastic. They're trying to attack it. They're trying to digest it. They consider it, an enemy, a pathogen. But they can't metabolize it, and so they become pro-inflammatory. And therefore, the universal response we see of the immune system to toxins is inflammation. Now, the research that's coming out about this, about plant-based compounds, is really important and really positive and hopeful because they're finding that specific compounds, and a lot of people have heard of these things, curcumin or bicolin. There's a lot of these things that are very famous compounds now. They can actually shut off that inflammatory response. And what that does is it helps us to live in homeostasis with the toxins so that the toxins are not creating the inflammatory reactions and damage in the body. So that's something that gives us a strategy, is to understand that all this stuff is pro-inflammatory. And if we therefore have an anti-inflammatory approach with our diet and our lifestyle, it's basically going back to that, how does the body detoxify all the time? If we can support that at the anti-inflammatory level, we are helping to establish, homeostasis in the body, even though we may not be able to get all the toxins out. That's a very short answer to a very complicated question.
Well, I love just how deep your understanding runs in these things. And there was one other area that we said we would cover today, at least at some of the high level that you're discussing, is like how to work with different detox remedies when there are a multitude of toxins. So like really multi-causal conditions.
Right. Well, this is where we have to look at each case individually. And I can give a few concepts of how I work with this. And the first thing is, um, what is the health condition? And if a person comes to me and their health condition is they don't want to go on statins because of high cholesterol, or they don't want to go on blood pressure medications, then what do we do? Okay. Or how do we reduce so safely? And so what we can assume now is that if there is a pre-existing condition, that toxins are going to make it worse. And so the very short answer to this question, how do we use detoxification remedies? We don't target the toxins themselves. We can assume that the toxins are mixing with the pre-existing condition. And so we treat the pre-existing condition. And if we can bring down the inflammation level, it's going to mean that there's a detoxification process happening without even going into, all of these complicated tests to find out if there's metals there or not, which is very unreliable. to find out all of these different kinds of chemicals that may or may not be there. These testing methods are very complex and expensive and not that reliable. And so what we have to do then is we have to start with the existing health condition and we treat that. And as that condition gets better, we can assume that the toxicity load is going down. Now, if there is a clear cause and effect between an exposure of something and toxicity, then we can say, all right, let's work with this. So in other words, if a person starts a medication and they get a whole range of really unpleasant side effects, we can say, well, okay, that is the medication is there for a pre-existing condition, but it's now creating all these new problems. So how do we deal with this? Well, we've got the pre-existing condition, and now we've got a secondary condition, which is the medication. So this is clinical practice. And what we do with this is we treat the whole person, and we assume that as we restore homeostasis and improve health, that it's also helping the body to detoxify itself. That's the short answer.
Well, David, it's clear you have such a wealth of experience in this area, and it's such a blessing for us because there are so many with the way things that can go wrong, and there's an increasing need to do it right. So thank you for what you've already shared. And I want to spend time now talking about your upcoming program, which is an extraordinary opportunity to learn from you and really get the download and the detailed understanding that's necessary to do healing toxic overload in a good way. So David has agreed to teach this 18 module training. It's a professional level clinical detoxification training. It's called Heal Toxic Overload with Plant-Based Therapies, a clinical detoxification training to defend and rejuvenate the body's major organs and vital systems. You can find it at the URL healtoxicoverload.com, healtoxicoverload.com. And David, I'd love for you to share in your own words some of your intentions for what people will come away from this training with.
I would like people to understand that detoxification needs to be done carefully and correctly. I would like to see people not harmed by detoxification methods that are very trendy. It's internet medicine or TikTok medicine. It's damaging, a lot of these things, as I described. So that's my first objective. We also need to know what these toxins are. And a lot of research is coming out. So one of the objectives of this course is to let people know about the science and what's being discovered about this and what we can do about it. A lot of this has to do with becoming aware of the exposure. So when I first started studying microplastic contamination, for example, I was shocked at how much I was actually using plastic on an ongoing basis and wasn't even aware of it. Well, I've gotten rid of the majority of it. And that's how it starts. We have to know what the toxins are and where they're coming from. And the reality is they're in everything. They're in every home. They're in all of these different forms. And so we would like to, first of all, minimize that exposure as much as possible. But then I would also like to make this really accessible in terms of an herbal program for everybody. So we're going to go through each of the organ systems and we're going to look at how to protect it and how to detoxify it gently. And of course, what that means, since there will be many people in the course and I won't know people individually, how do we detoxify safely? And that means gently. But here is a very important difference between this type of detoxification and more, internet-based trendy detoxification. There is a misconception that detoxification is a linear process. I'm going to do this flush and then I'm going to be clean. Well, it doesn't work that way because, as we learned at the beginning, the body is always detoxifying. It's an ongoing process. And therefore, as soon as you're done with that cleanse, toxins are still going to be there. It's just that they're going to start to build up again. And if you've weakened yourself, you won't be able to work with them. The body will not be able to process them as effectively. So this is the number one objective of this course is what can you use on an ongoing basis to minimize the impact of environmental toxins? What can you use on an ongoing basis to minimize the impact of the environmental toxins mixing and binding with the toxins that are in the body naturally, okay, that the body's always working with, all right? And therefore, we come to each module, and this gives us the opportunity to look at how to make it more personalized. So in the first couple modules, we're going to talk about the respiratory system. Well, this would be very applicable for people who are exposed to wildfire smoke or things that happened like in Los Angeles recently, entire neighborhoods burned down. A lot of people's lungs were damaged. There's a very clear example. You need something now. You need to start taking something now to help the inflammation in your lungs. There isn't anything that a typical cleanse that's going to be flushing the large intestine. Coffee enemas aren't going to help it. Colonics aren't going to help it. It's in the lungs. How do you deal with this practically to bring that inflammation down, that you have a clear link to a clear exposure? And we can find as we go through each of the modules, each of the sections, that there will be cases where people will be able to identify a clear exposure, and therefore this is the detoxification program for me. But there may be cases where people don't have a clear connection, clear link, clear cause and effect, but everybody needs it anyway. And so this is how I do it myself, is that I have a pharmacy and I rotate through things that are supporting detoxification at many different levels. Things that are supporting the inflammation of the detoxification of inflammation in the brain. Things that are supporting healthy digestive functions. Things that are supporting the immune system. Things that are gently enhancing the processes of elimination. And therefore, this can be something that everybody can use if they don't have a specific need for detoxification. So that's the primary objective, is to make this information that's coming out from modern scientific research about these compounds that are now known to work against these toxins at a cellular level and reduce their impacts. But these compounds come from plants that have a long history of use in classical medicine, and we find a very interesting new field emerging, which is the use of highly concentrated compounds with scientific basis at the cellular research level that actually correlate with the same uses from Chinese medicine and Ayurveda. So anti-inflammatory compounds, these are coming from herbs that were always used for detoxifying heat, okay? So that's the main objective, is to get this information to people in a very practical way as soon as possible, because we have a window of opportunity now to use the information, the research that's coming out, and the ability to use plant medicine. But the toxicity, the projections about where all of this is going is not good. And so we would like to get this stuff moving through our body as quickly as possible in a way that won't hurt us.
Yeah.
So the objective is, how can you create plant-based detoxification from here on as part of your lifestyle so that you are supporting maximum detoxification processes without doing any harm? That's the main objective.
Great. Well, it's certainly much needed, and you are absolutely the best person to do this work. So great opportunity. We'll have to kind of quickly go through the modules, but I want to give a little bit of a flavor for what you're going to be teaching and how some of them are clustered together. So module 1 is called Clinical Detoxification. Discover the most common internal and external toxins in the body's natural detox processes.
Well, that's pretty straightforward. We're just going to be looking at things like how do these toxins accelerate the aging process? And how can we reverse that? We'll go into more details about a safe detox, how to do that, and we're going to be looking at the importance of the terrain, the microbiome, the gut microbiome, the respiratory microbiome. We're going to be setting the context for the entire course because there are many terms that we're going to learn. There's a bit of science that's going to be repeated throughout every course. So the first module is really just an overview of what's coming, what our objectives are.
Great. Then we go into module 2 and 3, herbs and formulas to protect and detoxify the respiratory system from atmospheric toxins.
Right. We're going to be doing each system in two classes, and that's because there's a lot of information. And so we are going to start with the primary problems uh, in the respiratory system that can be linked to the primary toxins. And obviously, the main thing that we're talking about here is the particulate matter. And particulate matter is many different things, but the best example of it is wildfire smoke. And I've been dealing with this clinically for, many years now in California. People are, every summer, which is now 9 months out of the year, is people contact me and they have worsening of respiratory conditions. And there's a very clear link between the respiratory conditions and the environmental exposure. So what do we do to protect our lungs? How do we gently keep the detoxification process going? And this is one of the key points that is in every module. How does that organ system detoxify itself? If we understand how the lungs detoxify themselves, then we can support that process. So we go into categories of herbs, different things that work in different ways, and we look at, all the things that are affecting the lungs. This is a broad introduction to many toxins that can affect the lungs. And then we look at, well, what are the symptoms? How do they manifest? Well, it can weaken the immune system. It creates colds and flus, bronchitis, all these things, worsens asthma. Then we get into the formulas and we get into the specific herbs. But then we also start to look, since we've got two classes, we start to look in quite a bit of detail at the interrelationships between the organs as well. So in this module, we're going to be looking not just at the lungs, but also like the lung-brain axis. All right, and I mentioned that when I said that people who live near polluted highways are being affected at the neurological level. Air pollution increases neurodegenerative conditions. Well, how does that work? That's the lung-brain axis. Okay, so the toxins are coming in through the sinuses. That gives us a clue how we can treat it, how we can detoxify. There are ways to detoxify the sinuses. And detoxification of the sinuses is very supportive of detoxification of the brain. You see, so there are all these ways that we can approach detoxification by pairing the organ functions together. And so in this module, we're going to look at the lung-brain axis, the lung-heart axis, many other things. But in every module, we're also going to have a formula or two or three that people can do on an ongoing basis. You just take this and now you can use this months and months, years and years. It's safe, it's effective, it's gentle, it's supportive. And we will also have a meditation session in each of these two modules where we will be contemplating the detoxification process and enhancing it using our visualization and our Qigong. So that's the respiratory system.
Modules 4 and 5, herbs and formulas to protect and detoxify the digestive system and how to safely reduce medications that cause toxicity in the GI tract.
Well, this will cover all the same things. What are the toxins that are affecting the digestive system? What are the problems that they're causing? And how does the digestive system detoxify itself? You see, we have these primary things we're going to learn over and over and just apply it to each of these systems. And so we will learn the categories of herbs that help to detoxify the gut or strengthen the terrain. And we're going to be looking at how inflammation in the gut affects other organs. The gut-brain axis is incredibly important here to understand. And then we start to see the effects of the specific toxins, like the primary toxin that's getting a lot of attention now for affecting the gut-brain axis is the microplastics. The microplastics come in, they inflame the gut, That affects our mood, affects our nervous system. So we go through, and again, we will have the opportunity to learn about, uh, genuine, safe, medically based detoxification, because the digestive system is the primary thing that gets hurt from excessive detoxification practices. People take too many cleanses, flushes. And it's kind of a whole branch of pseudo parasitology that's out there that hurts people. And so we're going to learn how to protect the digestive system, because protection of the digestive immunity is fundamental to protecting ourselves from all toxins. So those are some things, but there's way too many things to delve into here. A lot of these things are the same type of teachings. What are the toxins? How do they affect the body? How do we treat them? What are the herbs? What are the formulas? What are some of the things that we have to watch out for?
Module 6 and 7, herbs and formulas to protect and detoxify the brain and nervous system and promote mental health through the gut-brain axis.
Yeah, this is really important. And it's very disturbing, actually, for a lot of people to find out that the plastic particles migrate to the brain. Everybody's content, everybody's levels of microplastics is going up across the board, every demographic. And so we need to know about some specific details here. And we need to know about the microglia, the macrophages of the brain that are coping with the microplastics and the heavy metals and the particulate matter. All this stuff is getting in the brain. We need to understand how the brain detoxifies itself, just like we need to know how the gut detoxifies itself. We need to know how the brain detoxifies itself. And that's where we also learn about the glymphatic system, and that's where we learn about the functions of restorative sleep, because the brain detoxifies itself while we're asleep. Uh, it's it's an interesting observation, but basically waking life is toxic and sleeping is detoxifying. And so how do we support deeper restorative rest is what we focus on here. But we also have all the other categories besides how the brain detoxifies itself. What are the major herbs that protect and detoxify the brain, the nervous system? What are the classical formulas? What are some of the compounds that are coming out now in the research? And we find really important things from Ayurvedic medicine also. Those entire branches of Ayurvedic medicine that have developed for a long period of time to detoxify and support the brain. They've known about this for a long time. So we're going to integrate the modern research about the microglia and the glymphatic system into classical Ayurveda. So that's about the brain and the nervous system. And of course, that gets into some complicated things, like a lot of medications affect the brain also. That's a sensitive, complicated clinical level examination of this.
Great. Module 8 and 9 goes into herbs and formulas to protect and detoxify the liver and gallbladder to enhance their immune supporting powers.
Well, the same basic structure. How does the uh, liver detoxify itself? What are the toxins affecting the liver? What are the categories of herbs that will help the liver to be uh, stronger and detoxify itself more effectively? How do we do that without harming ourselves? And here we have a lot of things that we can draw from classical Asian medicine as well, because classical Asian medicine developed a lot of very important concepts for how to detoxify the liver. And actually, Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine understood the role of liver toxicity in all kinds of other health conditions much more than allopathic medicine still understands, really. And so liver toxicity, liver qi stagnation, a lot of people have heard that term, liver qi stagnation. There's a lot of concepts that we can use from Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine to help us detoxify the liver safely. And we're also going to talk about how to take good care of the gallbladder so you don't even have to think about doing a flush. So that's the liver and gallbladder. Lots and lots of herbs for the liver and gallbladder.
Great. Then we go into module 10 and 11, herbs and formulas to protect and detoxify the cardiovascular and lymphatic systems and reduce the need for medications.
Yes, this is continuing on. There are so many systems here, but basically in this one, We're going to pair together the cardiovascular system, the heart, arteries, veins, along with the lymphatic system because they're parallel systems. But they're really two different things when it comes to detoxification. So the heart is being affected by environmental toxins. The heart is affected by heavy metals and by particulate matter. And at the same time, the heart is affected by the endogenous internal toxin of cholesterol and of inflammation as well. And so when we talk about detoxifying the cardiovascular system, what we're really talking about is how to have healthy levels of cholesterol. And this is a huge source of confusion for a lot of people. And one of the primary drugs that's prescribed almost like candy now is statins for everybody. Just keep your LDL down. Well, that's a pretty high risk drug. There's a lot of things that it can do. And it's being prescribed for people who don't really need it. Their cholesterol is a little high. And so this is a debate, and this is one of the topics that we're going to address because it's complicated. There's many factors. Doctors should not just be prescribing statins just because your LDL is a little high. You got to look at a whole pattern of health concerns, metabolic issues, inflammation, weight, blood pressure, all kinds of things before you go down the road of taking statins. And so therefore, this module is very specifically for people who are concerned about cholesterol, concerned about the statin threat by doctors, or maybe they're having toxicity from statins and they have reached a point where many people reach, which is that they can't stop the medication, but they can't stay on it either. And so what do we do about that? But this is also the lymphatic system, and the lymphatic system is of primary concern ever since the pandemic because many people have long COVID that is an actual diagnosed medical condition, but even more than that, many people have subclinical symptoms of long COVID that don't qualify for that diagnosis, but they still have never recovered their energy level. They still have brain fog. And so this is partly neurological, partly respiratory, and partly lymphatic, but this is where we can address how to deal with a lot of the remnants of COVID and the COVID vaccine inflammation as well.
Modules 12 and 13 then go into herbs and formulas to detoxify the urinary system and protect the kidneys against metabolic and environmental toxins.
Same categories. What are the toxins? How are they affecting the kidneys and the bladder specifically? And what can we do about it? What are the herbs that support the kidneys? And in this module, what we really focus on are chronic urinary tract infections and also prostate issues for men. But one of the greatest challenges in terms of the bladder is interstitial cystitis. That is a detoxification problem. But then there is also the effect of medications on the kidneys. And medications, prescription drugs are having a huge impact on kidney health, which is why dialysis units are all over the place. And chronic kidney disease is a topic in this module.
Module 14 and 15 then go into herbs and formulas to protect and detoxify the endocrine and reproductive systems and rebalance hormonal health.
This is where we look at the endocrine disrupting compounds. And this is difficult to make a link, but sometimes it's clear. And it is something that medically, with traditional medicine, there are a lot of things that can be very beneficial. This is actually where we learn about things like polycystic ovarian syndrome and endometriosis, or we can discuss the phytoestrogen debate. This is a really big topic in my clinical practice and courses as well, because women with estrogen stimulated cancer specifically are very concerned about taking herbs when they are going through treatment. And this is an interface between herbal medicine and allopathic medicine. And how do we integrate these safely? So that's part of this. We're also going to look at what are all these compounds, what are the major sources, how can we minimize our exposure to it, and so on.
Module 16 and 17, herbs and formulas to protect and detoxify the musculoskeletal system and ease inflammatory response.
Well, this is again the same categories of information. What are the toxins that are affecting the musculoskeletal system and how? And how does the body detoxify all that? If we know how to detoxify it, then maybe we don't even need to worry about what the toxins are. We just clean them out and reduce inflammation. So the primary manifestation is inflammation, but the topics of concern here are going to be things like the complexities of Lyme disease, because that tends to manifest a lot, not just in the nervous system, but in the musculoskeletal system. We're going to look at all the categories of herbs that are very beneficial for musculoskeletal inflammation. And there's a huge amount of material, herbs, formulas, background concepts, and diagnostic methods from classical Asian medicine we can apply here. But this is also where we can use adjunct treatments very easily, herbal baths, massage oils, herbal infused oils, all of these kind of things can come in here as well. So again, uh, it's a big topic, but these are the primary concepts that we'll cover.
And finally, Module 18, reviewing the most important aspects of detoxification and safe applications for long-term use of plant medicines.
All right, this is where we just sum everything up. As we could tell, there was a lot that we're going to be covering here, and we're going to use this to really bring everything into focus. So module 1, we just kind of open it all up. Here's all the main concepts. Here's the context of what we're doing, the basic principles. And then in the last one, we just wrap it all up and say, okay, now you've got all these formulas and this is how you use them. And also review all of the interrelationships between all this information, because then everyone will have all the knowledge about the toxins and how they are affecting the body. And so then we can just do a broad overview of what's happening and how we can move forward to apply this information on an ongoing basis. Because when people are done with this program, that herbal pharmacy is going to be so extensive and at the same time so safe and so relevant that you'll be able to use it for the rest of your life, literally.
What an extraordinary program. I mean, there's really nothing like this level of depth and comprehensiveness and the holistic focus that you have. It's really an amazing offer. So again, the whole program is laid out at healtoxicoverload.com, and we'll want to share a few other things that we haven't mentioned yet. So in addition to the 18 90-minute live sessions with David, which is a great time to ask your questions and get them addressed in a good way, we're also going to have recordings of every session, both video and audio, as well as word-for-word transcripts to work with, study, and highlight. There's also an opportunity for a one-on-one personal consultation with David for an additional fee. There's weekly practices for home. There's a community group to support you. And there's also a number of extra great bonuses that David has added in that are really amazing. There's a whole video teaching from the Illuminated Herbalism certification called Prana and Chi of the Five Senses, Spiritual Dimensions of Detoxification. There's principles and practices of clinical level self-care, part 4. There's a video also from that certification. You get a 10% discount on purchases from Banyan Botanicals and from Herbalist and Alchemist. You want to share a little bit more about the discounts people get on herbal supplies?
Yes, these two companies, Banyan Botanicals and Herbalist and Alchemist, have extended a very nice offer to students. And if you are in the course, then you'll get a discount code. And I refer to these companies and as well as many others. And the ingredients for your home pharmacy are optional, of course. But one of the things that people get in the program is a lot of sources, not just these two companies, but a lot of sources for very high quality herbs and nutraceuticals and these compounds, the specific compounds that we're going to be talking about. And so these two companies basically have offered this discount, and that's very helpful. Students take advantage of this offer. It's very helpful.
So that's yet another bonus. And then there's one more bonus you get if you sign up right away, which is a great reason to go through the page and really tune in and get a sense for if this is the right next step for you in your training and your development working with plant medicines. You will get a full 15 PDF essays on botanical medicine called Plants That Heal. So this is a really great extra bonus. David, you want to share a little bit about that, which is people get when they sign up today?
Yeah, this is one of the 4 books that I have written, and it is a series of essays that I wrote and presented at medical conferences. These are all essays that have been presented as part of, keynote speeches or submitted in various places. And so it's a lot of information about a variety of topics. Okay, it's just like a broad overview of some of the bigger concepts. How do plants heal us, basically? How are plants agents of nature's healing intelligence? That's what it's really about.
What a great extra bonus that is. And then so we've kept the investment really very reasonable for this incredibly robust, deep training. It's at a professional level. It's 5 payments of $395, so you can save 10% when you pay in full with one payment of $17.99. The training is going to start December 4th and run Thursdays at 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. But even if you can't make the live times, you can still get the full value with the recordings, the transcripts, and the community. So there's incredible testimonials on the page about how masterful David is as a teacher. I mean, there's unrivaled level of depth and wisdom that you're getting access to, and really deep clinical applications as well. So again, it's all at healtoxicoverload.com, healtoxicoverload.com, and you're going to get that special bundle of 15 different PDFs when you sign up by midnight tonight. And we're really looking forward to just having this, incredibly deep, powerful approach to the whole spectrum of detoxification to really get us optimized so we can give our greatest gifts and live in health and serve people with our practices at the highest level. So again, it's all at healtoxicoverload.com, healtoxicoverload.com. And you, I think, are going to be really blessed if you choose to move forward. So David, we're at the end of our time. It's always a pleasure and so revealing to be with you. Just there's so much you know. So anything you still want to share with folks who are continuing doing the full professional program with you?
Well, thank you again, Stephen, for the opportunity. And I would just close by saying that this information is increasingly important for everybody to know about. It's preventive medicine, how to protect ourselves. It's protective medicine. It's immune boosting. It is detoxifying, anti-inflammatory, and it is going to become increasingly necessary. There is a window of time that we have now where we can apply this information and really get its benefits. But toxicity is going up. We're going to need this more and more. We need to get, started with building our homeostasis and our immunity, strengthening the body as much as possible for as long as possible. And you don't have to think of this information as I need a detox, because as I made clear several times along the way, this supports the healing process of all kinds of health conditions. So I would say that this material is a foundation that will last for the rest of your life. The information that will be given, the herbs and the formulas and the methods and the concepts and the safety protocols as well. If nothing else, just knowing how to do detoxification gently on an ongoing basis, I hope that's been a revelation for a lot of people to understand that we don't have to hurt ourselves with detoxification. We can do it correctly. And so I'll stop there. And again, Stephen, thank you again for the opportunity and all the opportunities that you have offered.
Well, David, it's a blessing to work with you, and so you're so knowledgeable. What a great hour this has been. And if folks want to go further, again, David is offering this incredible program. It's called Heal Toxic Overload with Plant-Based Therapies, a clinical detoxification training to defend and rejuvenate the body's major organs and vital systems. And you can get all the detail at healtoxicoverload.com, and you'll get those special 15 PDFs if you sign up by midnight tonight. So thank you so much, David, and thank you all for joining. Many blessings.